I respect you, I admire you, I look up to you, and we all adore you. So congratulations. Let me present to you now the newest member of the Country Radio Hall of Fame, Mike Hammond.
That's Taylor Swift. Yes, the Taylor Swift. Inducting my next guest, Mike Hammond, into the Country Radio Hall of Fame after decades of accomplishment as a radio broadcaster.
From Fayetteville, Georgia, senior forward number 4, Shaquila Nunn.
And that's Mike Hammond, public address announcer for the University of Tennessee Lady Vols Basketball team. He's also the criminal court clerk of Knox County. If you Google the definition of superhero, it says a character in a story or film who has an unusual strength or power and uses it to help people. Usually they also have a less powerful, normal guy alter ego. Clerk Mike Hammond is sort of an inverse of that. His day job holds the power to help the people of Knox County, while he has this alter ego that's always been, well, super cool. Since 2004, by day, Clerk Kent, or Hammond, has been the mild-mannered, everyday small-town guy who has steadily served and helped the people of Knox County, first as county commissioner representing the 5th District, until in 2014 they elected him to criminal court clerk, where he has served ever since. And by night, his booming-voiced alter ego has rubbed shoulders with Wonder Women like Taylor Swift and legendary Tennessee Lady Vols coach Pat Summitt. Now, I say he's an everyday person by day, but as criminal court clerk, he uses his powers to help regular folks overcome adversity and get back on their feet. And while those powers may not make him invincible like Superman, in his job as public address announcer, he survived the legendary and dreaded Pat Summitt stare. Sounds pretty super to me. I'm Dave Stripling, digital media producer for the Administrative Office of the Courts, and today I sit down with Superclerk Mike Hammond on this edition of Tennessee Court Talk. Mike, thanks for joining us on this episode.
Well, thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
Let's start by explaining to the audience what a criminal court clerk does.
Basically, you collect the money and you keep the record. Now, we do a lot more than that, but that is the basic thing that we do according to the state constitution. Now, when we say keep the record, I believe that the court clerk is the hub of the judicial system. Can you imagine going into a courtroom and not having the documents that you need to present your case? Can you imagine if you have an appeal and the documents are not correct, or you can't find those documents, then everything grinds to a halt. And so we are the attorneys and the judges and the DA and the public defense. We are their best friend because we keep all those documents and we make sure that they are correct and that they are in order. The other thing that we're charged with doing is collecting any court fees, fines, forfeitures, and those kinds of things. And that's the challenge, is because in this day and time, inflation, gasoline prices, food prices, rent, housing costs, people are strapped, and it's getting more and more difficult to collect those costs, but we do the best we can.
How do you get this job in a county? Are you hired? Are you elected? Are you appointed?
This is an elected position. And so the criminal court clerk in Knox County and the circuit court clerk, they are two separate offices, those are elected. The clerk and master, who works with the Chancery Court, is appointed by the 3 Chancery Court judges. So every 4 years, we're up for election, and we go to the voters and say, okay, we think we've done a good job. Now, what do you think? And hopefully they'll reelect us if they think we've done a good job, or they'll kick us out and put someone else in if they think we didn't.
Well, how do you think you're doing?
Well, I think I'm doing great. I would hope that the citizens would think that we've done a lot of things to improve the office.
They truly have. According to his bio on the Knox County website, Clerk Hammond has overseen upgrades in technology, has helped turn over $6.5 million to Knox County thanks to efficient fiscal operations, and he's helped oversee a pair of forward-thinking initiatives that help citizens get their driver's licenses back.
We learned that when people needed to get their driver's license reinstated, that they were having a lot of red tape that they were having to go through. And most people would just give up. They would say, well, I can't do it. I just can't get all the information. I feel like I'm getting stonewalled, etc., because everything had to go through Nashville, the Department of Safety. So we decided that we were going to see if we could do something about that. So we went to Nashville, met with the Department of Safety, and we said, if we could do your paperwork and handle everything on our end and basically send it to you, what would you think about that? Their eyes lit up, and they said, we would love it. Well, we came back and decided that's what we were going to do. And so to date, we have 3,500 people now that have had their driver's license reinstated. Another program that we have started doing just in the last year is community service. We have found that there are people who, they can't pay their court costs or fines or whatever, but they're willing to do community service. So we actually went to the legislature, and the legislature passed a bill for Knox County allowing us to establish a community service program. So we now work with our judges and our people. We have 25 different nonprofit organizations in the community that will allow these people to come work. And so they've been able to just get their record clean. And so when they come back, their record is clean. They've paid their dues to society. The judges sign off on it. And in some instances, we can then help them get their driver's license back. And we've been doing it now less than a year, and we've already had 41 people who have come in, and they have actually worked off their fines. So it's a two-pronged approach.
It sounds like you're doing this with a big heart. You want to help people.
We do, and that's why we have taken the onus off of the DMV and the Department of Safety. That's why when we went to them and said, we will do this for you, they said, great, we'll let you. And so, yes, it definitely helps the community. It helps the individual. It helps families. Because, now they can drive to work or school or church or wherever, and they don't have to worry about getting stopped because they're driving anyway. And so we'd much rather them drive legally than not driving legally. And so this has been a program that's been hugely successful, and we're extremely proud of it. And we've had other counties come to us and say, what are you doing? Because we're hearing that you're doing these things with driver's licenses, and we want to follow suit. And I believe 3 or 4 counties have started doing the same type of program we're doing.
Every superhero has an origin story. Clerk Hammond's was in radio broadcasting in a storied career that spanned 46 years, where he entertained and helped a lot of people, and it won him a lot of awards.
It's funny because people will come in and say, well, gosh, you should be on the radio. And I said, well, I was at one time. I worked at WIVK here in Knoxville, and I was on the air here for well over 30 years.
You listed one station. How many other stations did you work for?
I started out at my hometown radio station in Churchill, Tennessee, when I was 15 years old, and would go and work after school and on the weekends. And then when I came to the University of Tennessee, I started working at WBIR AM, and then segued over to WETE AM, and then I was hired at WIVK as the news director. Then I went into programming management and that kind of thing. But I also worked in Nashville at WKDF. Then I went to Birmingham and worked at Rock 92 and the Sports Jocks, WJOX down there. And then came back to Knoxville to work at WIVK. And then during that time, the law changed and you could buy more than one radio station. And so the company bought a news talk station and a sports station. And so I was able to work at those with the same company. So I've done a little bit of sports, a little bit of news talk and country music and rock radio and that type of thing. It was a fun career.
During all that, you received an Edward R. Murrow Award in 1996, was it? And for anybody that doesn't know, it's a prestigious broadcasting award recognizing ethics, technical prowess, and other things. What led to that nomination and ultimately to the award itself?
We had a series of tornadoes strike East Tennessee. And in Knox County, back in 96, I think we had 5 tornadoes that touched down in the area. 2, I think, struck Knox County. Or maybe it was the same tornado. I don't remember. But I was on the air 36 hours from the time that all of that started until it was over, and it did a lot of damage. I think 5 people were killed during the course of that. And so being on the air for 36 hours, you accumulate a lot of tape, because we recorded everything. And so it was suggested to me, they said, you really should send this out for some judging, for some award competitions. And so I didn't think anything about it. And so I said, well, okay. So a friend of mine got the tapes, came in, edited it, put together a presentation, and sure enough, sent it to the Edward R. Murrow Awards, and we won a national award. And I got to go to Los Angeles and accept the award in L.A., and I was there with ABC News and CBS and all of the big guys. And here was a little boy from Knoxville, Tennessee, up there, getting the Small Market Award. But I felt just as important as they did because I felt like what I did was just as important as they did, even though they were doing these reports on in-depth investigations and all of this. But I felt like being on the air for people during a time of emergency like that, during tornadoes, and gosh, people were calling in. We were putting people on the air like crazy. They were scared to death. They were in their basements. They didn't know what was happening. And I felt like that just being on the air was reassuring to people, because we were saying it's going to be okay. This is what's happening. And it was amazing. The next day, the phone was just ringing off the wall. People saying, "Hey, we heard you at 2:00 this morning. We couldn't go to sleep. Well, we had our battery-powered radio, and we were sitting around listening to you." And it really made you feel like you'd done something worthwhile.
Yeah, that comforting voice is always great when you're in a bunker.
Right, exactly.
You're stuck. Is that where you learned to serve the community, through radio?
Absolutely. Yeah, because, in radio, you want to do things for the community, charity work. And so we did a lot of fundraising for St. Jude's Hospital, for East Tennessee Children's Hospital, and a variety of things. And, when there would be a hurricane, for example, in Florida, we would do clothing drives and money drives and food drives and water, those kinds of things. And there were several times where we would load up tractor-trailer rigs, and we would encourage people to come and bring water, and they would. And so we would just hook up those tractor-trailer rigs, and we'd send them to wherever. And then we would have some instances here in our own community. There'd be a fire, or there would be a tornado, or would be some type of disaster here. And so we would, get on the air and encourage people to give and encourage people to help. And this is a very giving community. I have found that if you were on the air and you asked them, they would help. And I remember one time we had a snowstorm, and it was, I guess back in the early 90s when we had like 18 inches of snow, and people were stranded, and they were, and we had an ice storm too a couple of years later. But we found that when you went on the air and you said, "Hey, so-and-so out in Dry Gap Pike needs help because they're stranded or stuck," sure enough, somebody would call and say, "Hey, I'm just a half a mile down the way. I got a 4-wheel drive. I'm on my way." And it was just things like that you were kind of directing traffic, so to speak, but just helping people who really needed help.
Now, you're a small-town boy from Knoxville, but you're in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Tell us a little bit about that. You were inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2010 and introduced by a world-famous artist. Now, tell us about that artist and what led to her being chosen.
Well, I started at my hometown radio station in Churchill, Tennessee, and just developed a love for country music. And the first country artist I ever met was Tex Ritter. And Tex Ritter, of course, at that time he was running for the U.S. Senate, and he was there as a politician, not as a country music star. But, I got to interview him. It was actually my very first interview ever. I was 15 years old and scared to death.
Oh, wow.
And so anyway, I'm talking to Tex Ritter, but I found out with him, all you had to do was just ask a question. He'd just kind of take off because he wanted to, tell everybody what he was all about. And so just a great interview. So I got to really got into country music after that. And so it really segued right into my interest when I started working at WIVK, because it was a big country music station, on Music Row. Had a big audience, and was just very much into the country music scene, and spent a lot of time down on Music Row. Well, because we were so close to Nashville, a lot of the artists would come by, and if they were driving through, or if they were here for a show or whatever, they would come by and sit and, talk about their music, what they had coming up. We got to do interviews and those kinds of things. So I got to meet a lot of artists. But I get a call one day from a gentleman named Scott Borchetta, and he said, "I've got a new artist that I want to bring by to see you. She doesn't have any music out yet. She's only 15 years old, but we think we got something, and I'd really like to come and play some of the rough music that she has now, but just give you a chance to meet her. Because we're real excited about her." And I said, "Okay, what's her name?" He said, "Well, Taylor Swift." And I said, "Oh, okay, Taylor Swift, never heard of her." He says, "No, you haven't, but you will." And so I thought, well, they always tell you that. So sure enough, they came in with a bus, and she was on the bus with her mom, and we brought her in and put her on the air. We were her very first radio interview, I think. And so they didn't expect us to put her on the air because we're right in the middle of afternoon drive, which, if you know anything about radio, it's prime time. So we put her on the air and talked to her and asked her about her background and what she wanted to be and all of this. And she actually had a song that was a rough cut, and we asked if we could play it, and she said, "Sure, yeah." And so anyway, we played her song on the air, and that was the first time one of her songs had ever been played. And so we developed a relationship after that, and every time she would come to Knoxville, she'd come by the radio station and say hello to everybody and just very nice and very gracious. And so if we were at an event that she was at, she would always make it a point to say hello. And so anyway, when I found out that my peers were going to induct me into the Hall of Fame, you can select someone to induct you. And I thought, I think I'll ask Taylor. She'll probably say no, but I thought it wouldn't hurt to ask. So anyway, I asked her people, and I said, if Taylor's available, I said, because of our relationship and all of this, and she had already become a worldwide star, and she was in Japan around the time. And I thought, well, she's in Japan, and so she won't even be here, but I asked anyway. I get that phone call, and they said, well, Taylor's coming back, a couple of days before that, and she said she'd love to. And I went, oh, wow, Taylor Swift is going to induct me into the Hall of Fame. Now, this is too cool. So sure enough, that night she came and was just very gracious and gave a really nice remarks and talked about our meeting when she was 15 years old and how nice we were to her, put her on the air, played her music and all of this. And it was a special night.
So Mike, thank you so much for giving me a chance. Thank you for everything that you do for country radio and for the artists that you introduce and put on the radio for the first time. I respect you, I admire you, I look up to you, and we all adore you. So congratulations. Let me present to you now the newest member of the Country Radio Hall of Fame, Mike Hammond.
Would you consider yourself a Swiftie?
Oh, absolutely. She segued out of country music into the pop world, and she's done. Everybody knows she's done extremely well. She's a. Anytime you say, okay, Taylor, everybody knows who you're talking about. And so, but worldwide, I mean, she can go anywhere in the world, kind of like Dolly. People know Dolly Parton. Well, they know Taylor. And so, absolutely. I like her music, some more than others. But my grandchildren, they think their granddad's cool because he's met Taylor Swift.
Well, I think you're cool for that.
Thank you.
So, public address announcer for the Lady Vols. What a dream job. How'd you land that?
That's an interesting story because back in 1987, I believe it was, Pat Summitt and Joan Cronin, who was the women's athletics director, would come by the station from time to time to do interviews. And at that time, Lady Vols Basketball was nothing like it is now. You might be lucky if you got 200 people to come to a game. And so it was growing in popularity, but it hadn't gotten there yet. And so they just happened to mention to me that they had a student doing their public address announcing. And they said, we'd really like to, have some more professionalism in that. And they said, if you know of anybody that would be interested, we'd love to talk to them. And I said, I really think I would be interested in doing that. I said, I'd really like to audition. And they said, you don't have to audition. If you want it, it's yours. So I went, oh, okay. And so my first game was at the old Stokely Athletic Center. And sure enough, maybe there was 200 or 300 people at a game. And so then they built Thompson Bowling Arena. And so I got to do the very first basketball game, period, at Thompson Bowling Arena because they did a doubleheader. They had women's basketball first and then men's basketball after that. So it was a packed house because people were there to see both teams. And so I got to be on the mic for the very first basketball game at Thompson Bowling. And, of course, the popularity of women's basketball and Pat Summitt and national championships and the whole nine yards. So the agreement that I had with the Lady Vols was I said, I'll do it on a year-to-year basis. And if you ever decide that you don't want me to do it, just tell me you don't want me to do it anymore. And I said, no hard feelings. I said, things change. And I said, if I decide I don't want to do it, then I will let you know. Well, that's been over 30 years, and we have managed to say, hey, let's do it another year. And I'm really excited about this year. I hope I get to do it another year because of Coach Caldwell. I think she's going to bring an exciting brand of basketball to the arena that we haven't seen before.
Now, public address is different than play-by-play announcing, like you might hear on radio or television. Being a PA announcer is an art all its own.
Well, you're the voice in the arena, and so you're not a you are a homer, so to speak. People know what that means. Is that I'm there to be a voice for the home team, and make no bones about it. And if you go to any arena in the country, the public address announcer is going to be behind the home team. I usually get to the arena about 2 hours in advance because I have to do a lot of scripts because there'll be contests, there'll be presentations, There'll be a lot of things that are going on during timeouts, during a halftime, those types of things. And so I want to make sure that I know exactly what is expected of me. And so they open up the doors 1 hour before the tip-off. And so if I get there 2 hours before, that gives me an hour to go over everything with the folks who are there, the producers. And they'll tell me how they want everything to flow. And so we will do that. And then during the course of the game, my job is to, talk about the scoring, the three-point plays, the fouls, and also anything that happens during the course of the game. If there's a change, I've actually had them hand things to me on a napkin and say, hey, you need to do this. And so I'll look at it and I'll say, okay, we'll do it. And so it's pretty intense because you have to watch the action. Because you want to make sure that you're doing the right player with the right shot, and they're calling the right fouls and the people who are going to the foul line and that type of thing. And so, and plus you have to keep up with the fouls, because in women's basketball, in the quarters, you do 5 fouls, and then after that, it's automatically a 2-shot penalty. And so just keeping up with all that, and you want to make sure that each player, you don't want to say, okay, so-and-so's got 4 fouls when they've only got 3 or 2 or things like that. And over the course of 30 years, I've made a few mistakes, and I have miscounted a foul, or I thought it was on number 31 when it was actually 32. But I have people around me at the table that if I have a question or if I've made a mistake, they'll let me know very quickly, and they'll say, Mike, the foul's actually on 32, that kind of thing. But it's we have great camaraderie at what we call them the table crew.
What's the most exciting part of being on the sidelines at Thompson Bowling?
Just watching the game and just seeing, and because I am where I am, I can hear both coaches. And so when they call a timeout, I can hear the Lady Vol coach, and you'll also hear the opposing team's coaches. And that is probably the most exciting thing is, and particularly when you have a close game and you're watching the coaching, and you know that they're watching every single play, they're watching every single player, they're in their mind forming a strategy for what they want to do. And so probably the most exciting thing is on games where it goes down to the wire. And, they call that play. And, of course, when the Lady Vols win, it's euphoria. When the Lady Vols lose, it's, okay, well, we did our best. But we've had more than our share in the arena of those kinds of games where the Lady Vols have pulled it out, in the last seconds. And so it's really fun to do that and to be able to use your voice to help with that excitement when that happens. There's nothing like it.
Now, are you guiding the crowd just a little bit? Or are you doing certain things to try to keep the crowd into it? Or are you just reading the room and going along with them?
Basically reading the room, because you know that when there has been a steal and they come down and they, do it, and particularly when they go ahead or they tie the score, the crowd's going to erupt. And so I give it a little extra because I know that, the crowd's going to really be into it at that time. So over the years, you tend to read the arena, and you tend to read what's going on the court, and you kind of know. And particularly when the other team calls timeout because of a run from the Lady Vols, that's special because, when you see that coach out there calling timeout and you give it that little extra, that's a lot of fun.
At this time, they are presenting Coach Summitt with a replica of the new court called the Summit.
You've known Pat Summitt pretty well. Do you have any fond memories that you can share with us?
She was the thing about I tell about Coach Summitt is she demanded excellence from everyone around her. It wasn't just the players or her coaching's team. It was everybody. So if you were on the table crew, she wanted excellence. She wanted you to do your best. And she would let you know if she didn't think you were. And so she was very good about heaping praise, if you did something well or whatever. There has been a couple of times I got the famous Pat Summitt stare. But she was just very professional, very, very classy, I would say. I have absolutely nothing negative. I don't think anyone could say anything negative about Pat Summitt, just in the way she conducted herself, and really promoted women's basketball and basketball in general, the way she conducted herself on the sidelines. She rarely got a technical foul. Now, she did. I think she got maybe 2 or 3 the whole time I was in 30 years. But, she was able to hold her cool. And I'll never forget, she liked messing with the referees in a fun way. And I'll never forget, the team was behind and they weren't playing good defense. And so anyway, Pat called a timeout and went over to the referee and said, "Listen, will you tell them to start playing defense?" And then she just turned around. Well, of course, the referee just died laughing. But, that's the kind of person she was. She was just very jovial, but she wanted to win. No, make no doubt about that, no question about that. She wanted to win, and she wanted to win championships.
So I have to ask, what did you do to get the stare, and how did it feel?
It was awful. It was Tennessee and Georgia. And at the time, Shamiqua Holtzclaw was the star player on the team. And I want to say her number was, let's say 33. And so anyway, it's toward the end of the game. It's tight. It's close. And so anyway, referees call a foul, and the referee flashed 3-3. And I looked down and I thought, oh my gosh, that's Shamiqua. She's fouled out. So I go on the PA and I said, foul's called on number 33, Shamiqua Holtzclaw. That's her 5th personal foul. Crowd starts booing. And I'm wondering, what have I done wrong? And then Pat jumps up and looks at me and gives me that stare. And the people next to me and said, "Mike, it was number 33 on Georgia." So quickly I go back on the mic, says, "Correction, that foul was on number 33 of so-and-so of the Georgia Bulldogs." And so anyway, Pat, she looked at me and kind of nodded and said, "Okay, you got it right, but don't do that again." She didn't tell me that. I knew that's what she was thinking.
Do you have a special introduction or style that you do for introducing the starting lineups in each game?
Yeah, we have they have a video that they use, and they have fireworks on the court. And so as you're announcing each individual player, they will do fireworks, and they'll show the player's picture up on the big screen and that kind of thing. And so for the starting 5, I will do their names, and I will draw out their names. It's not like I would come in and say, "Okay, and now starting at forward, number 33, Shamiqua Holtzclaw." I'll say, "And now, starting at forward, number 33, Shamiqua Holtzclaw." And the crowd goes crazy. And so I do that for each one of them, and I have a little bit of distinctive ones for each one.
Escorted by her father, Gary Thomas, and mother, Kimberly James, from Portland, Oregon, ladies and gentlemen, senior guard, number 0, Jordan Reynolds.
And just right here, that has my hair standing up on the back of my neck. I don't have a lot of hair, and it's standing up. Who are your influences for that? Were you influenced by any certain teams or anybody you saw growing up? And do you still go to games and say, "Oh, I like that technique. I like to do that"?
Oh, absolutely. What I'll do a lot of times is I'll watch the NBA, or I'll watch college games, and I'll find somebody that I think is really, really good, and I might try to emulate something or pick up something that they do. The Chicago Bulls guy, to me, he was one of the best. And I went to a couple of Atlanta Hawk games, but from time to time I will just watch TV, and you can hear the announcers, you can hear the PA people in the background. And so I will listen to them, and I'll think, "Ooh, I like that," or I'll say, he went a little overboard on that one. That's okay, because everybody has their own style.
And you mentioned other sports that you've done. What other sports have you done public address for?
I did men's basketball for 10 years, and I was doing both men and women, and I just couldn't do both because it got very time-consuming because I have a family and kids and the whole deal. And so I gave up men's basketball because I had Pat Summitt gave me my start, and I thought, to me, that's loyalty. She didn't have to, but she gave me my start, and so I feel like I needed to see it through. And I did men's for about 10 years. I also did the orange and white football game for about 4 years, and so they would ask me to come and do the orange and white game, and so I was able to do a little bit of football. And orange and white game is a lot different than a regular game because, it's just fun, and if I messed up, it really didn't matter. So, but that was good. I also did a couple of high school. When my kids were in high school, they asked me if I'd do some high school stuff, and I did a couple of high school. I did an entire season for my sons. When my son was at Bearden High School, I did one season of the Bearden Bulldog football team. Then my daughter played basketball, and I did her senior year when she was playing basketball.
Clerk Mike Hammond can be heard every night the Lady Vols play at Thompson Bowling Arena in Knoxville. And during the day, you can find him at the Knoxville City County building, calmly serving the people of Knox County and doing a super job at that. For Tennessee Court Talk, I'm Dave Stripling. For more Tennessee Court Talk, check out tncourts.gov or search for Tennessee Court Talk anywhere you get your podcasts.